Hi, and welcome to Boom It's on the Blockchain. We are in our 81st show. My name's Alistair Caithness, and today we're joined by a special guest, Phil Johnson, who is the founder of the Master of Business Leadership Program. Is that correct, Phil?
Yeah, that's correct, Alistair.
Perfect. So just to kick things off then, Phil, just give a bit of your background and how you've got to where you are today.
Sure. It's great to be with you. For the past 23 years, I've been an executive coach, working with executives and organizations all over the world to help them to succeed, both in their career, their personal life, and in their businesses. Um, I've helped organizations in 13 different countries generate about $1.5 billion in revenue um, through the Master of Business Leadership program. And prior to that, I was an executive in the semiconductor industry for about 20 years, traveling about 60,000 miles per year throughout North America and the Pacific Rim.
So yeah, so interesting background. So to just kick things off then, Phil, go a little bit about your program and all the different disciplines of it before we focus on the emotional intelligence piece.
Yeah, the MBL program uh, provides a root cause solution to a root cause problem that develops emotional intelligence, inspirational leadership, higher consciousness, which helps us to free us from our ego-based fears, which leads to higher levels of trust and engagement, which guarantees career, personal, and corporate success. Now I know that's a mouthful. Um, the MBL program is a 13-week program where we get together for about an hour a week. Um, but the ROI keeps getting greater and greater as you use the habits and micro skills in the program. There are some organizations I've been working with for over 13 years consistently because the ROI uh, never ends.
So what are the main disciplines within the program then?
Great question. Um, hmm. The root cause challenge we all face is that we are unconsciously giving away our energy. Um, and that creates a need in us to replace that energy by stealing it from others. And that is the root cause of all drama, chaos, and conflict everywhere. So the MBL program uh, shows people how they're unconsciously giving away their energy, and they give them better habits. We give them better habits of practice to stop doing that. And when they stop giving away their energy, their need to steal the energy of other people goes away because they don't need it. And it's in that process that you become a more inspirational leader. Uh, you develop your emotional intelligence, and you get all those other remarkable results that I'd mentioned.
So talking about the emotional intelligence side of things,
Mhm.
now obviously, I read your bio earlier and you said it's like a $10 trillion industry. But how does emotional intelligence work and what are the factors behind it so people can sort of understand it?
Yeah, great question. Um, we're facing a tsunami of change, a tsunami of accelerating change with a 500 million year old brain that doesn't like change. Doesn't matter whether the change is positive or negative, we don't like change. Some scientists estimate in this century we could experience the equivalent of 20,000 years worth of change. So change is increasing at a very rapid exponential rate. So what happens is there's a part of our old lizard brain called the amygdala that's been trying to keep us safe and alive for hundreds of millions of years by making sure we never leave the security of our cave. And if we do, it automatically triggers the release of a hormone into our bloodstream called cortisol. And that causes the executive center of our brain, our prefrontal cortex to shut off, and we go into what psychologists refer to as an amygdala hijack. Some people lash out, some people run away, some people freeze like a deer in headlights. When that happens in conflict situations, people die. When it happens in business or personal situations, relationships die. We burn trust. So, as an analogy, if you think of your amygdala as a very frightened 4-year-old child, the development of our emotional intelligence acts like a big brother or a big sister to quiet the amygdala response down and better enable us to feel the fear and anxiety that change and innovation always triggers in us and be able to move through it towards what it is we're trying to achieve, as opposed to allowing that fear and anxiety to keep us trapped in our comfort zones. And I can give you an example of, if you're interested, I'll give you an example of a company that's currently valued at $3 trillion dollars, and they're doing about $600 billion dollars a year in revenue. And their primary hiring focus is emotional intelligence. And that company is Apple. And that's why when you walk into an Apple store, the energy you feel is an example of a more emotionally intelligent environment. They're not trying to sell you anything. They're trying to understand your pain and, if possible, offer a solution to your pain. Whether you buy anything or not is secondary to their desire to want to serve you. They want you to have a great experience, and maybe you'll tell your friends and they'll tell their friends. And if you think about it, the way you feel, the energy you feel in that environment is a very different energy from the energy coming out of the stores surrounding that environment. So, in many respects, because of the accelerated rate of global change, the development of our emotional intelligence represents the future of individual and organizational change.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I studied management of change back in 1990s in Robert Gordon University under my old professor, Dr. Bob Gammy. He's dean of York University now. Always big him up, you know. So but that was the first time, and I remember that subject coming in, and it was a new subject at the time. You're looking at 1993, 94, and management of change. And, you know, back then, your business studies was like accountancy, economics, you know, I majored in economics, all the sort of traditional business ones. And then this subject, management of change. And then the funny thing about it wasn't until I was actually working in a company and I was brought in as head of sales to sort of change the organization from a sort of service organization to a sales organization. But you felt a lot of change. And I remember the CEO told me at the time, he said, listen, no one's going to like you in here. You're coming in with a new idea model. This is what I want. But we've been operating this way for 20 years. So I can sort of see the concept of that, like management of change. But this concept of emotional intelligence is more advanced than that, isn't it, Phil?
Yes, it is. It very simply is becoming intelligent with our emotions. It's a whole other different type of intelligence than intellectual intelligence. And quite frankly, the lack of emotional intelligence has often caused destructive results when we simply rely on our intellectual intelligence. There was a 40-year study done at UC Berkeley in California comparing intellectual intelligence with emotional intelligence, and they concluded that emotional intelligence was 400% more valuable in determining success than intellectual intelligence. But let me try and give you a numeric example of the difference between IQ and EQ. Um, think of think of intellectual intelligence as somebody giving you $10,000 a day for 31 days. So at the end of 31 days, you've got $310,000. Think of emotional intelligence as a penny that doubles in value every day. So day one, you have a penny. Day two, you have two pennies. Day 31, you've got $10.7 million. Day 40, you've got over 5 billion. Day 50, you've got over 5 trillion. See, not everybody can have a high IQ. If you have a high IQ, your parents had a high IQ, their parents had a high IQ, and you simply inherited those genes. But everybody can develop their emotional intelligence, and the ROI is massively greater than intellectual intelligence. It's interesting. I've been on over 100 podcasts in the last 18 months as a guest talking about the value and importance of emotional intelligence. Um, and as a general comment, uh, people have people are just beginning to understand the potential, the value, and importance of the development of their emotional intelligence. But we're just at the very, very beginning stages. Um, so our educational system has failed us, and our employment system has failed us because they've focused primarily on our ability to do intellectual labor and have done nothing to prepare us for the tsunami of change we're facing in this century. Um, so the lack of emotional intelligence is really a major contributor to the toxicity we find in organizations. The current level of employee engagement worldwide, according to Gallup, is around 13%. Low levels of employee engagement are costing the U.S. economy over $1 trillion a year alone. Um, so it's a big problem, and it's going to get worse with the accelerating rate of global change. So the development of our emotional intelligence isn't a solution to the challenges we're facing. It's the only solution to the challenges we're facing. And as I say, it's a very different type of intelligence than intellectual intelligence. Uh, Meaning you can't develop emotional intelligence by reading a book or having a conversation or watching a video. Those are intellectual processes. The development of emotional intelligence is an experiential process. It's not an intellectual process. Um, so that's what the MBL program is all about. I show people how they're unconsciously giving away their energy, and I give them better habits to practice to stop doing that. And when they stop giving away their energy, their need to steal the energy of other people goes away, and everything gets better. It's
Great.
energy physics.
Energy physics. I like that. I was reading an article in Harvard University about what is emotional intelligence, trying to gen up myself before this started, and they spoke about this article like four main topics of self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management.
Yeah, that's sure. That's those are concepts. Those are intellectual concepts, and they're correct. Those are those are indicators of emotional intelligence or the lack of it. And within those four general areas, there's a total of 18 different subsections. But the bottom line is energy physics. The bottom line, when you learn to stop giving away your energy in how you communicate, listen, take responsibility, make decisions, all sorts of ways, everything gets better. So when you give away your energy, you raise your walls and you become resistive, judgmental, and attached to outcome. When you stop giving away your energy, your walls come down and everything gets better. Let me excuse me. Let me give you an example of how we unconsciously give away our energy. This is one of the habits I talk about in the MBL program called authentic listening. And the key to authentic listening is not to take anything personally. How somebody feels about you, whether they like you or whether they don't, has nothing to do with you. It has to do with what's going on inside of them, whether their walls are up or down. But if how you feel about yourself is how somebody else feels about you, you're unconsciously giving away your energy to them to determine how you should feel about yourself. If you like me, I like me. If you don't like me, I don't like me. Now, as crazy as that might sound, what I've described is all of social media. We bend over backwards, giving away our energy, hoping that people will like us so that we can feel better about ourselves. And so when we're giving away our energy in that way, it also simultaneously creates the need to steal energy of others. And we often do that using some type of position based power to control, manipulate others. And that dynamic of unconsciously giving away our energy and the need to replace that energy by stealing it from others is the root cause of all drama, chaos, and conflict, war everywhere in the world. And I can tell you from having worked in 13 different countries. There's MBL alumni in 13 different countries. It's no different anywhere in the world. We are we're only conscious about 3 to 5% of the time. The rest of the time we're relying on our excuse me, on our habits to determine our behavior and our results. That's fine. Um, but that dynamic of unconsciously giving away our energy and stealing the energy of others is going on inside of everybody, everywhere, all the time, 24/7. And it is the root cause. It is the singular root cause of all drama, chaos, and conflict. And it's the solution by learning to stop doing that. When you simply learn to stop giving away your energy, it guarantees your success. Everything gets better. It's not easy. It's like Navy SEAL training for your emotions. Um, there are three primary sources of resistance to change, and two are biological and one sociological. But so it begins with see, there's only two sources of motivation that will motivate us to want to change. Um, one is fear, the other one is passion, and hardly anybody's connected with their passion. So, for the most part, the individuals that have that motivation to be willing to leave their comfort zone in the pursuit of better results are usually motivated by fear, pain, a need for urgent, better results than they're currently getting. And as you go through the MBL program, that motivation changes from a motivation to get away from something, i.e., fear or pain, to a motivation to move towards something, your passion. So it changes from getting away from the fear to moving towards your passion.
And then, so when you start the program with leaders,
Mhm.
how do they start to implement what you're teaching them? Is it, do they work through the program, or how does it
Yep.
actually the process work?
Great question. I show them week over week um, the habits that are causing them to give away their energy and how they communicate, listen, take responsibility, all sorts of ways. And I give them better habits to practice to stop doing that. And I get them to record a couple of examples during the week of how A, they use the habit and how B, they didn't use the habit. So I want them to compare how they feel and what they learn and whether using the habit or not using the habit is causing them to earn or burn trust with the other person. So I want them to compare their existing habit and the results they're getting using their existing habit with the new MBL habit. And so we review that and build on it week over week. And I say to people that I'm coaching, I said, if the MBL habits don't work better than your existing habits, don't use them. But quite frankly, between you and I and the other 3 million people that are listening to this, they always work better. But you have to prove that to yourself. You can't take my word for it. And that's where the journaling process comes in. So the MBL program is very much focused on actions and results. I often say to people, so I've worked with people running multi-billion-dollar companies with thousands of employees and Harvard MBAs and PhDs, and I've been a faculty advisor to doctoral students at Northwestern in organizational development and emotional intelligence. And I say to people before I start working with them, I don't care what you think. I only care what you do, because what you do will change what you think. So whatever somebody's doing or not doing today, they're telling themselves a story to rationalize the behavior. I don't care what that story is, because we're going to change the behavior, and changing the behavior will automatically change the story. So you can't think your way into acting differently. You have to act your way into thinking differently. And the MBL program is all about actions and results.
So how does it fit in with other business programs out there?
It's better.
Yeah, that's a good answer. But
It's I've never it's so I've been on this path for I'm 70, and I've been on this path for 55 years, and I've been doing this work full time with executives and organizations for the last 23 years, and I've been doing it for another 20 years prior to that, part time in my semiconductor career. Um, I've never seen anything better than this, unfortunately. I've never seen anybody talk about energy physics as the root cause and solution to all drama, chaos, and conflict. Um, so I've really I've written a lot of books. I've written a lot of articles. I've done a lot of podcasts. I have my own podcast. I'm trying to do as much as I can to ring the bell about the value and importance of emotional intelligence. Quite frankly, we're in trouble as a species. Um, we have to change our trajectory dramatically. We have to begin the change process dramatically in the next 10 to 15 years um, if we're going to survive as a species in this century. In relative terms, humanity has been on the planet for less than half of 1 second. In that time, we've destroyed the climate. We're dealing with things like CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing technology, AI, other pandemics, and we're totally unprepared to deal with them. Um, we're at a tipping point as a species, and we have to evolve. We have to raise our level of consciousness because of the accelerating rate of global change. And what that really means is that we have to develop our emotional intelligence so that we can make better choices. A long time ago, Mark Twain once said that if the only way mankind can survive is through experience, I see no hope for mankind. So, in other words, if the only way we can learn not to put our hand on the stove is by putting our hand on the stove, that assumes we're going to be around for a do over. And a number of the a number of the situations we're facing, you don't get a do over. You've got to know not to put your hand on the stove before putting your hand on the stove. And quite frankly, we simply lack the wisdom, we lack the emotional intelligence to be able to make those choices. And that's what needs to change. So we're in trouble.
so obviously, social media is playing such a big part with everything out there. How does social media interact with emotional intelligence in terms of what people are giving away and what they're looking to consume? And is this just like a circular motion that's just getting faster and faster and getting worse and worse with people's emotions?
There's something called emotional contagion. There's a concept called emotional contagion, so that if you're around, if you're giving away your energy, they say like frequency attracts like frequency. If you're giving away your energy, you tend to attract other people that are giving away their energy. If you're not giving away your energy, then you tend to attract people that are not giving away their energy or people that would like to learn how to not give away their energy. That's called inspirational leadership. Um, so, the challenges we're facing and how we're facing them are motivated some people to leave their comfort zone in the pursuit of better results. And that's creating higher levels of awareness, higher levels of consciousness, higher levels of leadership and emotional intelligence. So they're evolving. But unfortunately, for most of us, we're going in the other direction. We're devolving. The fear and anxiety that change and innovation triggers in us is causing us to move deeper into our comfort zones, and we're becoming more resistant, more judgmental, more attached to outcome. So we're really at that tipping point, and we really need to be looking to the people that are willing to do the emotional labor of their developing their emotional intelligence to inspire and lead the rest of us in that direction based on their behavior and the results that that behavior is producing. So that's where we are.
In what process does like government and educational involvement have in this?
I'm
You
sorry,
know,
say again.
so what process to say like government involvement? You know, so you look at the Chinese government compared to the US government and their ideologies that are put in there. How does emotional intelligence go through different sort of government ideologies that's coming down to the people from that? Or does it matter?
Yeah. Um, I'm going to give you the 30,000-foot view to answer that question. Hmm. Let's assume, for the sake of our discussion here, that all of our social, political, and economic institutions view power as external rather than internal. So that basically your answers are out there somewhere. You're not enough, you're not complete. Um, we're living in a win lose model that does view power as external. So, it's in order for me to succeed, somebody's got to lose. And that's incorrect. But all of our our government, business, sports, everything reflect that win-lose model. Um, so it's unsustainable. We killed more people in the 20th century than in all of recorded human history. And we're following that example in this century. So we're going in the wrong direction. um, the truth is that all of our answers are internal. Um, and learning to lower our walls and stop giving away our energy connects us with our internal source of power. See, we get bombarded with fear messaging daily, constantly, everywhere. We're much more worried about what might be trying to eat us than what might be trying to help us. So, in a sense, that fear messaging that we're being bombarded with, both externally and internally, stop us from leaving our comfort zone in the pursuit of better results. And it triggers our release of our giving away our energy and the need to steal the energy of others. In many respects, you can view it as a kind of slavery. We become enslaved by our ego based fears. And the development of emotional intelligence creates the agency or the freedom to stop giving away our energy. And then it removes the need for us to steal the energy of others. And that guarantees success.
So so a lot of the things you're talking about is this going through sort of human history? Do you think we've evolved not in the correct way? Because if you're looking back over this, you know, the centuries where it was before, and the old shamans and stuff like that, and when they were trying to find the outer reason for living rather than this inner, you know, instantaneous buzzes that we're looking now. Do you think there's something we should have been learning from the past we need to bring forward, or how does it work?
Oh yeah, yeah. We've really gone off the rails, and industrialization hasn't been our friend. We've really become very focused on our ego-based fears. See, our ego wants us to feel superior or inferior, but it never wants us to feel equal. Our ego is always looking for somebody to battle against. It's always looking for the other to compare itself against. Um, and we've really become very attached to our egos and the fear that creates in us. So yeah, we've been going in the wrong direction for a very long time. And if you want any proof of that, simply stick your head out your window. We've got to be crazy to think that whatever we're doing is working. So we have to evolve. We've reached a tipping point where we have no choice. We must evolve or perish. And the nature of that evolution is the development of our emotional intelligence.
Yeah, that's interesting. No, I'm always interested in the sort of history of the world and how long we've been here, and interest in astronomy, and how the planet's going around and everything else with this. But if you're talking about emotional intelligence, is it, you're talking maybe like a place like Africa right now, where, less than 20% have probably got access to electricity and access to, say, like the internet and banking and things like that. But they're all going to be coming online. There'll be mass industrialization that's going to happen through there. If you're looking at places like that, that's probably going to develop faster that we've developed in sort of the Western cultures over the last 150 years. They're going to do this in, say, 10 or 15 years. How's emotional intelligence going to be applied to them? Is it going to be even more difficult for them, or what's going to happen when it, or is it just the same
Uh,
with everyone?
I think it's going to be easier for them than it will be for us because uh, they've had to do a lot of emotional labor of learning to move through their fear, in large part because of the circumstances that they're living in. Same thing with India. I think that North America, I think that the kind of what we call the first world nations um, may be the last to develop their emotional intelligence because they simply don't have that same sense of urgency that other parts of the world have.
Yeah, because I went traveling in Australia for a year, and actually stayed in the Northern Territory with a guy who's an Aboriginal guy, and he'd always say, the Aboriginal is something very special to teach the white man. He's just not ready to learn it yet. And
Exactly right.
I'd be all the time, well, teach me, teach me, teach me, But it's like, is it something like that they
Yes.
understand? Because it's like he spoke about how the Aboriginal people belong to the earth or Mother Nature,
Yep.
whereby
Yep.
our thinking is the earth belongs to us. You see what I
You
mean?
hit the nail on the head. Our thinking. We have to stop thinking. We have to stop that voice in the back of our heads that's going constantly. We have to learn to distance ourselves from our thoughts, which will enable us to become more present in this moment because the present moment is all that exists. The present moment is all that will ever exist. There will never be a future moment. It'll just always be the present moment. And so the more we can quiet our mind, we can shut off that voice in the back of our head, the more we can allow ourselves to enable ourselves to be present. And that's what people from time to time have been telling us repeatedly through the centuries. The key to enlightenment is simply to become present in this moment. That's all there is. It's not a matter of doing, it's not a matter of being, it's not a matter of thinking. It's simply a matter of being present in this moment. The more present you are, the more influential you are, the better the results you're able to generate. You shut off that voice in the back of your heads. It's interesting. This may surprise you what I'm about to say, but all mammals have a primal drive to be present in the moment. We're currently spending over $4 trillion a year in various ways to be present. It's called being in the flow with the present moment. Some of those ways are destructive and they cause us to become less conscious. And some of those ways, like learning to not give away our energy, are constructive and we become more conscious. So you can't get better results in your current level of consciousness. In order for us to get better results than we're currently getting, we have to raise our level of consciousness about what's going on in us and around us. And we do that by learning to lower our walls and stop giving away our energy. And that's what that Aboriginal gentleman was trying to tell you. And that's what all great leaders throughout history have been trying to tell us. But you see, you have to experience the concept in order to truly understand it. Understanding alone won't do it. You can't develop emotional intelligence by reading a book or watching a video or having a conversation. Those are intellectual processes. The development of emotional intelligence is an experiential process. It's not an intellectual process. Often the folks going through the MBL program, they're going, holy smokes, this stuff's incredible. And I say, yeah, I know. But let me ask you something. Is there anything I could have said to you in the beginning before you started down this path that could have prepared you for what you know now? Are there any magic words? And they always say no. There's nothing you could have told me that could have helped me to understand what I understand now. And see, that's the difference between knowing something intellectually and knowing something experientially. Lots of people know stuff intellectually, but it's not reflected in their behavior. So they know it intellectually, but they don't know it emotionally. So it's actually very dangerous because they actually think they know more than they do because they understand the concept. Understanding the concept is easy. Applying it is difficult.
Yeah, no, I completely get that as well. I remember reading the book, The Celestine Prophecy. I don't know if you read that book there. And that was back in like 1990s. I stayed with these rainbow
Yep,
people for like three
yep.
weeks in Australia.
That book talks exactly about what we're talking about here, energy physics.
But the way you're talking about it is sort of developed in a way that people can understand it from a business perspective rather than talking about it away in terms of sort of not supernatural, but you know what I mean. It's like is if God's getting you to think of this specific thing or whatever God is at that point. And I think Celestine Prophecy talked about that, and I was interested in it at the time. And but again, it was about living in this moment. But really, what you're talking about from a business perspective is like how you can apply it's not logic, how you can apply that sort of thought process without thinking. And that's it. It's amazing.
It guarantees, you're exactly right. It guarantees success. I just gave a talk earlier today. I wish I had the notes from it, but let me just I'll tell you how I opened up the discussion. What if you could guarantee your success? Success in your career, success in your personal life, and success in your business. And what if you could guarantee that success would continue to increase exponentially over time for the rest of your life? And that's exactly what the MBL program does. Um, but unless you have an emotional connection to something you want to achieve, that's greater than the fear that's going to get triggered in you when you leave your comfort zone in pursuit of that desired result. You may want better results than you're currently getting. You may want to succeed, but you won't be willing to do the emotional labor that getting better results requires. So I can guarantee, because it's energy physics, I can guarantee an individual and an organization's success, both career, personal, and business. Guaranteed. And that success will continue to increase exponentially over time. Guaranteed. The challenge is being willing to do the emotional labor of moving through your fear to learn to lower your walls. And as that Aborigine was saying, become more present. That's the challenge. And I can tell you, it's like Navy SEAL training for your emotions. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do. It's much harder than intellectual labor or physical labor, but the ROI is massively greater. What's worse than doing the emotional labor that change requires is not doing the emotional labor that change requires. And we've been avoiding doing that work for a very, very, very long time. And that's created the world we live in. And it's simply unsustainable. So we're at a tipping point where we have to start doing the emotional labor that produces phenomenal results by learning to stop giving away our energy. And whether we recognize it or not, we no longer have a choice. So the sooner we follow the example of companies like Apple and start hiring and developing emotional intelligence, the better off we're all going to become.
Perfect. Yeah, that's been great then, Phil. That's a great way to end off the podcast as well. So I really appreciate your time today, Phil. It's been super interesting to learn about it. Is there anything else you'd like to add just before we close out? Or how can they find you online?
I can give you a link to my Zoom calendar if
Mhm.
anybody would like to continue the conversation. And the only other thing I would say is just it's time to bet on yourself by developing your emotional intelligence. Stop looking externally for your answers and start looking internally.
That's perfect. That sounds like the Buddhism there in a nutshell, you know. So it's but there's so much truth in that as well, you know. So yeah, I spent time in Asia as well, through Thailand and Laos and Malaysia, and went to a lot of the Buddhist temples, and it was amazing time to be
Yeah,
with these people, you know.
there is only one truth. There is only one truth. And what we've been talking about today is that truth. And that's what people like that have been trying to tell us, trying to show us throughout history. We all need to be moving in this direction.
That's perfect. All right. Well, thanks very much for your time today, Phil. Appreciate it, busy guy.
My
And
pleasure.
and thanks to everyone out there. You've been watching Boom It's on the Blockchain. My name's Alistair Caithness. Have a nice day.